Isn't it weird to think that this show that looks so innocent on the outside is actually one of the most controversial pieces of work ever constructed? The art style of South Park makes it look like a wholesome kids show, but we all know that couldn't be further from the truth.
Elmo puts his hand on your knee and says fun things.
Have you ever been tickled on the inside?
Most people think South Park is just controversial for the sake of being controversial, but they're wrong. It is surprising just how important a show like South Park is in the world today. In fact, I would go as far as to say that South Park is the most important show in 2024. Even though it has been around since the start of the century, but I'll get to why I think that later. First, let's take a trip down memory lane and have a look back at some of their funniest controversies across the years. South Park's first few controversies were relatively tame, with most people just getting annoyed that an animated show was cursing and doing things they hadn't seen on TV before. And yeah, there was a bit of anger from some terrorist groups in 2001 when they spent a whole episode of the show making fun of Bin Laden after the 9/11 attacks, and some snowflakes got pissed when they said the word shit 162 times in an episode, but that stuff isn't what I'm interested in, because there are 3 episodes, spanning 3 different decades, that I think really show the importance of South Park speaking its mind and never backing down when faced with resistance. So first, let's go over them in chronological order, and then I will explain why these episodes needed to be made and are so much more than just using controversy to get a laugh out of people. Trapped in the Closet first aired in 2005 and was notable for 2 reasons. The first, and less important reason, was that they made repeated references to the rumour that Tom Cruise is not straight as he claims and is actually trapped in the closet and won't come out.
Dad! Tom Cruise won't come out of the closet!
The second, and more important part of the episode, was their comment on Scientology, which is a cult that disguises itself as a religion. It believes some truly crazy things, and exists for the express purpose of trying to scam people into forking over their hard-earned money. The episode was incredibly well researched, with Matt and Trey reportedly talking to former members of the cult to get insider information. In fact, the episode was so accurate that the higher-ups of the Scientology cult pretty much put out a bounty to find out bad things about Matt and Trey so that they could ruin their credibility. They went as far as sending their members to try and get a job at Comedy Central so that they could get some inside information about what was actually happening at South Park Studios. Needless to say, they didn't end up finding anything. Trapped in the Closet goes into excruciating detail when explaining what Scientology actually believes. And the whole time there was a graphic on screen that made it clear to everyone that despite how crazy it sounded, it was all perfectly accurate and they hadn't taken any creative liberties. They also didn't shy away from revealing the true reason for the existence of the cult either. Most of the episode focuses on Stan getting tricked into paying Scientologists for their wisdom, which of course was a load of bullshit, and was made up to take advantage of people who were suffering, like Stan. Matt and Trey even included a scene where the head of Scientology explicitly states that he is only in it for the money, and doesn't even believe in any of the things that he is saying.
Wait a minute, whoa, you don't actually believe this crap, do you?
The point of all of this being that this episode brought a lot of public attention to an evil group of people that otherwise would not have been talked about. There's also something I'd like to draw your attention to, and it's the nice, juicy subscribe button. Just look how tempting it is. Don't you just want to click it? Go on, do it. I dare you. Whilst undoubtedly the most controversial episodes in the 2010s decade were the episodes 200 and 201, because of obvious reasons, they aren't what I want to talk about. Instead, I'm interested in a collection of episodes in Season 19, released in 2015. Almost every episode in this season is controversial in some way, with Episode 1, Stunning and Brave, seeing a new, more socially aware version of South Park start to develop. It starts with the introduction of PC Principal, which is an important turning point for the show as a whole. The character is used as a representation of what the world is like today, and South Park is the embodiment of what the world was like about 10 years before. The very first episode in this season literally uses what the show describes as offensive imagery and outrageous stereotypes to provoke people to open their eyes. The very next episode is entirely focused on Mexicans immigrating into America, and the views of people on either side of the fence. Of course, in South Park they didn't actually use Mexicans for the immigrants, they used Canadians instead, but the point still stands. They weren't afraid to offend some people and said some pretty insensitive things in order to get their point across.
Well, there's only one immigration policy that I believe in, and that's fuck them all to death!
The middle of this season doesn't have much to talk about, with most of the episodes being mildly offensive but nothing major. The final episode, however, PC Principal Final Justice, sees an epic conclusion to the season's overarching story. PC Principal, who as I said earlier is a representation of modern, politically correct America, starts the episode by killing everyone that doesn't agree with him. The obvious message Matt and Trey wanting to get across, of course, was that PC culture is always very quick to shut down anyone who disagrees with them. The episode continues on, wrapping up various plot points and ending with a clear commentary on gun laws in America. And that is the season. It was honestly a bit messy, and didn't focus on just one controversial aspect of the world that they wanted to talk about. However, the reception to this season was clear. Half of the people who saw it were praising its use of comedy to talk about current issues, and the other half was still just angry because the cartoon was saying naughty words. It sparked many conversations between people from opposing extremes of the political spectrum, and at the very least got its viewers to consider the issues that they were pointing out. And the best part is they did all of that in a really funny and entertaining way. Season 19 served as a start to a new, even more politically focused show, and it would only continue into the 2020s. We're not even halfway through this decade yet, but there is already a pretty extensive list of controversies South Park has been in so far. We kicked off the decade with the pandemic special, which just by the nature of it talking about COVID was going to anger people on either side. But for the most part, it stayed out of the news. 2023's Cupid Ye and the Worldwide Privacy Tour made poignant remarks about celebrities like Kanye West and Meghan Markle, and unsurprisingly got a lot of media coverage. But I think the most recent South Park special is the most important episode released in the 2020s so far. South Park: The End of Obesity is what made me make this video in the first place. It is only about a month old, but it is already a classic episode in my opinion. It takes shots, both literally and metaphorically, at the American healthcare system, as well as the relatively recent fad of non-diabetic people taking obesity and diabetes drugs as a substitute for doing exercise to prevent being overweight. They also made fun of Lizzo, which, to be fair, there is a lot to make fun of, but that was just an extra thing that they couldn't resist adding. Just like Lizzo can't resist one more slice of cake, and I can't resist making that joke, and you can't resist the subscribe button. This extra long episode, which we now know as a special, is perhaps one of the best South Park episodes when it comes to making a point about the world. They managed to spend most of the 50-minute runtime showing a pretty accurate version of what is actually happening in real life, and somehow they did it without foregoing any of the comedy. The plot revolves around Cartman trying not to be fat anymore with the use of these new drugs. However, in order to do so, he has to
navigate the American healthcare system.
It quickly becomes apparent that Matt and Trey aren't very big fans of how the healthcare system works in America, with the boys spending ridiculous amounts of time trying to get things done, but always being slowed down by the way things are set up. This episode is only being seeing minor controversy since it's been released, and whilst I've definitely seen a few people getting angry about it,
and first of all, let me say that I am not a South Park fan.
Most people seem to be agreeing with what South Park is saying. Whilst in the past when they would make episodes that tackled controversial issues, they would be met with resounding opposition, this time it seems like they got most people on board, and perhaps it is just because it's been the general consensus for a while that something needs to be done about the American health system, but I think it's more that both the world and the writers are finally starting to understand what South Park's purpose is. These three controversies that I've chosen from across the years have all been examples of episodes that tackle pretty big issues in a fairly non-apologetic way. However, the public reception of these episodes have been very different. In the 2000s, most people weren't trying to give the show enough time of day to see what it was actually saying. The 2010s started to see a shift, with their social commentary becoming stronger and more people starting to pay attention to the deeper messages behind all of the jokes. And now, it looks like the world is finally taking South Park seriously, which brings me back to the start of this video, where I said that this show is the most important right now. In a time where censorship and cancelling is extremely prevalent, we need a show like South Park to make fun of all of the bullshit that people have slowly just become accustomed to. If they don't use their position to absolutely take the piss and make fun of people, then who will? I think that even 27 years in, South Park is just as relevant as when it first aired. In fact, I think it's even more every year. It is a show that just keeps giving, and for that, I thank you, Matt and Trey, for making a show that resoundingly doesn't give a single fuck.